small till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it breaks. She hated when I call and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope I never keep you waiting. She think I know it all, but I don't. Welcome to this new week, new episode of the Mixtape with Scott. I am the host, Scott Cunningham. I'm a professor of economics at Baylor University. And this is a podcast about the personal stories of living economists, where we're going to talk about their life and how they got where they got and why they got there, at least in their best understanding of it. Today's guest is someone that a lot of people probably do know about by reputation, but haven't had a chance to hear him. He's not, to my knowledge, very active on social media, which means, he's getting stuff done probably. His name is Dmitry Arkhangelsky at CEMFI. He's one of the co-authors of a sort of breakthrough superstar paper called Synthetic Difference in Differences, which was published in 2021 in the American Economic Review, co-authored with Susan Athey, David Hirschberg, Hito Imbens, and Stefan Wager. It was a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed it. I did not really know anything about Dimitri's story, and we go through his life. I'm going to let it go. And we also get to go pretty deep on synthetic diff and diff, but in a fairly accessible, interesting way that I hope really resonates with a lot of listeners. I think this is a great podcast episode to share. I know I say that every week, but I really think this one is. Dmitry has an interesting journey, and he sort of falls into economics and econometrics kind of in his own way. That's not like, from the time I was born, I was going to always be an economist, because again, I'm always struck by the fact that nobody really grows up wanting to be an economist, and it's really one of the most exciting, interesting professions and fields, just the field of it. So it's really great. Dimitri's a wonderful person, and I highly recommend sharing this podcast with your friends, with your students, with your colleagues, with your professors, with your parents, with the person that cuts your hair, whoever. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to turn it over to these two guys and let them start talking. See you in a minute. Well, it is my pleasure to meet with someone that I've not met before. I don't think we've ever even spoken before, except by email when I asked you if you could be on the show. This guest is, a lot of people have heard of him too. Would you tell us your full name, your title, and who pays your paycheck?
Hello everyone. So my name is Dmitry Arkhangelsky. I'm a professor at CEMFI. I'm also currently visiting Harvard, and I'm very happy to be here. And what was the third thing that I should say?
Who pays your paycheck? But you said it, CEMFI.
Yes.
And CEMFI's in Madrid?
Yeah, CEMFI is in Madrid, in the capital of Spain. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's get started. So I wanted to start with an icebreaker. And so what is a vacation that you have gone on that even to this day, you still think about from time to time? Doesn't have to be a good one, or it could even be a bad one, but you've noticed that it still pops in your head from now and then.
It's very simple. So when I was doing my PhD at Stanford, in 2016, I went on a vacation to France. It was Euro Cup in France, and I was actually biking. So I crossed Pyrenees on a bike from Spain to France. Did a short loop, short like 700 kilometers loop around Toulouse, and then I ended up in Toulouse. So that was
wow.
That was
Did you do that by
cool.
yourself?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
I
okay.
met my friends in Toulouse when I.
Oh, have you always been a big cyclist?
No, this was the first time I did something like that. I mean, when you're at Stanford, you cycle all the time just to commute.
Mm.
But I never did anything like that before. But I repeated it after.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a common thing to do what you said? I mean, is that specific route?
Well, I mean, it's not like I did part of it, which was common. So there is so in Spain, there is this famous Camino de Santiago. So this is a famous route that goes to Santiago de Compostela. There is another part which is in France. So it's 700 kilometers, which are in France. And so I did part of my route on that. Okay, so that
I
part is
see.
famous. The other part is just you just do a loop around.
Okay. You had this big road bike though. Did you take it? You had a big road bike that you bought there or what?
I bought a gravel bike
Oh,
in actually in Spain.
oh, wow. Okay. All right. Well, so tell me about where you grew up. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Russia, so I was born in Moscow. Then I was living in Moscow until, well, or suburbs of Moscow until I was 23 years old. And then I
Oh,
moved to Stanford to do a PhD. And so I was in
yeah.
California, and then I went to Madrid. And
Suburbs of Moscow.
well,
That's where
I
you grew
grew,
up?
yeah, well, like I started living in suburbs of Moscow after I was 15 years old. So before that,
Oh,
Moscow all the time.
where'd you live before 15 when you were like a little kid?
Oh, I lived in a regular, I don't know, apartment building in Moscow.
Oh, okay. So you at 15, your family moved to a different part of Moscow,
The suburbs, yeah, to
the
suburbs. Moscow is
suburbs.
a huge city, so we moved out a little bit, like 5 kilometers away
Oh,
from the boundary.
so what did your parents do for a living?
Well, I mean, I was raised by my mother and my
Mm,
grandmother. So my grandmother was at home, so she was always at home, working at home. But my mother was working actually two jobs. So one was she was working as I don't know how to translate that in English to be like something like a research fellow
oh,
at the Moscow State University Economics department. Uh,
really?
yeah, and then but this was not the main job for her, and because in the 90s those types of jobs you would not be able to survive doing just that. So
Oh, I see.
had and still has actually a more kind of corporate type of job where she organizes conferences for medical
Mm.
professionals.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you have any siblings?
No, no, I'm the only
Oh,
child.
okay. So when you were a little kid, what kind of games did you like to play?
Kind of games when I was a little kid. Actually, it was not that much of a game. So after I was, I don't know, 6 years old, I was mostly reading. Af-
Really?
yeah. After I got like 11 years old, I was playing computer games, but then I was not very little by then.
Oh, what kind of books? So you were a big reader. So if I had
Yeah,
found you as a little kid, you would have had you would have been just reading some book.
yeah.
Ah, what kind of books did you like?
Well, I mean, it was a typical, well, like a typical in Russia type of, you follow some of the French literature, like Alexander Dumas, this type of things, Jules Verne,
Mm.
that is very common. Then there is Russian part, all the Russian program, which includes, I don't know, Pushkin, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky.
As a little kid, you were reading Tolstoy and stuff like that?
Oh, Tolstoy I was reading when I was like 12, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, but then yeah, parts of it, yeah. Like, but yeah, when I was little, it was like from 7 to 10, it was mostly French because this is
Oh.
the adventure type of literature, right? So,
Oh, right.
so that
The
was reading.
Dumas is what? That's the Count of Monte Cristo?
Yeah, that's actually the one that started it, and and the story is
Oh.
funny because there was a movie. Well, there is a movie, a French movie, and it has two parts about Count of Monte Cristo, the old one, and there was Jean Marin. And so there you so kind of you watch the first part, and then kind of the first part ends with kind of with the hero being he just returns from the prison. Okay, and then the second part is where he kind of and tries to avenge himself. And so and I was a little kid, so I was able to watch the first part of the movie because it was early on TV, and I couldn't see the second part because it was
Mm.
too late. And so I decided to read about it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So yeah, so
That's ambitious. I was not reading The Count of Monte Cristo when I was like, 6 or 7 or 8 years old.
no,
So you
well,
just you loved fiction.
yeah, at that time that was what, yeah, that was the
That's what you loved? Huh.
yeah.
Uh, and then you liked video games. What kind of video? Did you have a computer or did you have like like an Xbox or something?
Oh, Xbox didn't exist back then, right?
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I think so. Yeah, but no, I first, yeah. So my mother bought me a computer,
Yeah.
personal computer. I convinced her to do that because I told her this is very important for my development. And so then, but then I mostly was playing video games.
What
I
kind of
mean,
games do you like?
well, that was the time before so this was 2001, right? Or 2002. So there were so the games that people play now, I guess, like multiplayer games online, back then it was not like that, right? So I was
Right,
at
right.
home and just one against the computer. I don't know, the standard stuff at the time, like Warcraft, like
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
Right, right.
that was the thing, and then there was but then we were still playing some of the multiplayer games. So like Counter-Strike
Mm,
was the thing, but for that you would need to go to a special place. It was like a club.
mm,
You
mm,
go there and you pay for hours.
mm.
Then you can play online.
So you grew up in the city
Yes,
up until like an age, and then you moved out to the suburbs.
yes.
What's the city like for a kid?
I
I've never been to Moscow.
Well, I mean, Moscow has changed tremendously since I was born, right?
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. First of all, it became much larger, but it also became much more modern as a city.
Mm.
And my life was kind of pretty straight. I was living in a relatively okay neighborhood. It's not like there are in the 90s there were bad neighborhoods in Moscow.
Mm.
But it was very safe. I was commuting daily to school on subway by
Oh.
myself. So I was going there. It was a commute of like 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And so then that's the everyday life. And then
Mm.
I was in school, and then I would go home. Sometimes
Yeah.
my parents would organize someone to meet me at school so that that person would go home with me. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So when you what was your high school like? Was that hard moving at that age? You said 15. Was that difficult?
well, I actually I was in the same high school, so I stayed in the same. So in Russia, it's very typical that you stay in the same place. I mean, a lot of people move, but from school to school. But for example, in my class, most of the people who I started with when I got there at age of 6 were the same people that graduated with me at when I was 16. Uh, so
Oh.
so yeah, so it was the same school. When I moved out, the commute got longer, right? So the commute
Oh, I
got
see. You
like
stayed.
1 hour
Got
and
it.
20 minutes, so like 1 hour 15 minutes.
Oh.
That's the change.
How big was your high school?
I mean, it's like 30 people per class, 33 people per
30,
class, two classes, two parallel classes. So you should think like 600 students.
600 students per grade or for the
Oh,
whole high school?
in total in
For
school.
total? For
Yeah.
total? What kind of stuff did you like doing when you were in high school?
Well, I mean, there are different types, like Russian education is very unequal, right? So there are types of high schools that are extremely ambitious, right? And so to the day, if you talk to many people, say, who are working, say, in economics or professionally successful in the United States, they often come from the same types of high school. So I have lots of friends, say, in San Francisco, who all came from the same school in St. Petersburg. Okay,
Oh,
so
really?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and many of my friends who are in Moscow also came from the same school. Mm.
Oh, so what
Uh,
was it was like
but
a was it like this kind of very well, yeah, what kind of high school was it? Why is that so common?
but my school was not like that, right? So my
Oh,
school,
yours was not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My school was like it had two features. Okay, so first was location. So it was located in the center of Moscow. That's why I needed to commute.
Mm.
Okay, and that was kind of fancy, but it only that is there, right? So when I tell people, oh, I was studying there, they're like, oh, this must have been some very special school. But education-wise, it actually was not very special. The only special thing about it was that they were that I had English starting from like first or second grade 5 times a week.
Oh,
So that was the only special thing. And
okay.
no, but the things that I liked were literature, history, and mathematics.
Oh,
That's what.
oh, yeah. So you're reading, is it pretty common as a high school student in Russia to be reading Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and others? I mean, I was an
Yeah,
English
sure.
major, so I love, my favorite book is Anna Karenina,
Okay.
but I would not have been reading them in high school.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. No, that's a part of the program. It's not just common. It's
ah,
mandatory.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Who
like you
was your
get to
favorite writer?
Tolstoy. Well, you get to Tolstoy when you are like in 10th grade or 11th grade.
Oh,
Yeah, but well, what was well? I mean, as I was saying, so I was a very avid reader until I got my computer. Okay,
ah.
so then things changed. No, at the time, I would say my favorite writer was Dostoevsky actually.
That was your, is that a common? Is he the most beloved Russian
I
writer?
don't think. I mean, like many people, kind of again, because it's a mandatory thing.
Yeah.
Everybody reads it, but most people don't kind of have any particular emotion
Mm,
associated with it. It's just a necessary thing. So like when you say that Anna Karenina is your favorite book, it basically it means a lot, right? So that you kind of it was a choice for you to go and read it for everybody in Russia, this would not be a choice, right? This would be something
mm.
that you would need to pass the exam that might have a question on that. Yeah, so.
But you were different, it sounds like, because you actually really did love literature ever since you were a little
I
kid.
did like it. So yeah, I was actually enjoying it. Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
at the time, it was all that I was doing. I was reading and sometimes I don't know 5 hours a day. Yeah.
So when does mathematics become interesting? Is that a high school phenomenon, or is
It
it
was
you
a
noticed it
high
even as a little
school.
kid?
It was a high school thing, but again, because my school was not among the special ones that
Mm.
prepare people to I don't know win. In Russian, it's called like Olympic Games in
Yeah.
math
Yeah.
or some international competitions, right? So there are schools that prepare you for that. My school was not like that. Okay, so
Hmm.
I was just enjoying the school program basically, which is okay. And I guess compared to some other countries, it might be relatively advanced, but compared to Russian level, it's of course like in this top schools, it's nothing. Okay, and so
Mm.
I was just enjoying that, and but then when I started to get into the undergrad, okay, to prepare to get into the undergrad. For that, I needed to pass the exam in mathematics, uh,
Mm.
and it was obvious that my skills that were just from the high school would not be sufficient, and so
Mm.
I had to study. First, I was studying in kind of in a group, and it was almost for free. And then my mother found a person from Moscow State University who was tutoring us.
I see. That was high school. High
That was
school,
high school.
you
Yeah,
realized the state you needed to pass these math requirement
yeah,
tests. Did you
yeah.
feel like you had the skills when you started doing this, the intense studying? Did you sort of feel like I actually am a very good math student? Did you start to feel that way?
I'd say it was ups and downs. Okay, I had an amazing, really great teacher who played a big role in my life, and so he made sure that every time you thought very highly of yourself, something kind of would knock you down, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that you understand that you know very little. Okay, so
Yeah.
he was very strategic actually about that, and so I thought that I was doing okay, right? So
Mm.
and I thought that I had good chances of passing the exam, and kind of honestly, and this was kind of looking back, this is somewhat ridiculous. I never thought that kind of I might not pass these things. Okay, so I never thought, oh, because in the way it worked back then, you go to there's a special day of the exam. You go and you need to write this exam. Okay, if you fail on that day, there is like no second chance that year. It's like it's that day, and you need to wait a year to go to the same place or try to find a different place. But I never thought of those options. I was like, okay, sure, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pass this exams. And of course, when I'm thinking about this now, this was very naive of me. It would be completely possible for me not to pass those exams and end up being in somewhere in some other place and so on.
Mm. What did you know about economics when you were in high school?
Well, as I was saying, my mother was
Right.
a research fellow in this in the Department of Economics, but it actually, as I was saying, it didn't mean much, in the sense that, I mean, the Department of Economics at Moscow State at the time was pretty disorganized. There were few people who were doing what we would call modern economics.
Yeah.
Okay, there. The rest of the people were doing, well, different things. So you can call it like economic statistics. You can call it like almost journalism about economics, or you
Mm.
can call it, or what was just the remains of the stuff that they were doing before the transition. Yeah, so in the Soviet Union. So,
Mm.
so then to answer your question, the answer is no. Okay. But when I was preparing for the entrance exams, one of the exams was not in economics, it was like social sciences. And there you had to learn something. Okay. And that was the only time, the first time I was actually learning anything about economics. It was when I was in the last year of my high school.
Mm.
And the stuff that
Mm.
you learn is basically microeconomics.
Were you interested?
I was, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I don't really remember. I don't think I was very much interested.
Hmm.
Maybe to me, it was the other aspects. I thought more about, this is the subject that would combine things that I like, right? So I like social aspect of it, and I like the fact that you need to know math, but I didn't have any idea of how these things actually kind of look, how the economic
Right.
research actually looks like.
Right. Right.
So it was that I had a very vague understanding of what I'm going to be doing.
Well, so what's Moscow State University like? What's it? How would I compare it to say like Harvard, Stanford, UCLA, like state flagship universities? What is Moscow State University like?
Well, first of all, it's a big university, right?
Mm.
So I think we're talking about, yeah, I don't want to lie, but I mean like definitely tens of thousands of students at all levels, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and it has lots of, and it's very heterogeneous, right? So historically, there are places that had a splendid reputation, right? So you talk to someone, I don't know, from the 70s, 60s, and 80s, even maybe, and about, I don't know, math department at Moscow State University, to and it might have been the best in the world by far. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and then maybe similar things could have been said about, I don't know, physics to some extent, although there
Mm.
were strong competitors. But this was after the transition, right? So after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was like high, like education. Russia was not getting any money really, and so all of
Mm.
this started to degrade pretty quickly. People were also moving out, and so when I was there in 2000, so when I started there in 2006, it was very different, right? It was Moscow's, say, Department of Mathematics was still very, very, very good, but it was on decline. Uh,
Mm,
our economics department was unclear. It was very prestigious to study there, right? It was like the place where you study, where you know that many people who work in top government jobs would study. Like it was a prestigious place. But at the same time, the level of education was not particularly high. Some things were very good, but there were ridiculous courses that I do not recommend anyone taking.
mm,
So that's what it was like. And but at the same time, it was a university, right? So it is like you have many students, you get you have new friends, and from that perspective, it's I would say it's quite similar. If only
yeah,
it's in compared to US, you need to say like it's in a very big city, right? So Moscow,
right.
there is like New York is not analog of Moscow, right? So, but it would be like something close, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you might
yeah.
think of studying at NYU to some extent,
Do you
but
miss Moscow? It seems like you had a really cool life there with growing up in the actual, like this, in the center of a vibrant, you know, international city, and
well, at
then
the
going
time
to
it was not
college
really
there.
international.
What's that?
And at the time it was not really international. Yeah,
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
yeah. At the time it was it's like there was not that much of an international aspect going on.
Okay. Okay. Do you miss it though?
Well, I mean, I miss many things about my home country, right? So the city aspect, uh, well, I mean, it varies, right? So when I live in Madrid, I don't miss anything of that because Madrid is an amazing place to live.
Yeah.
When I'm, say, in the United States, it's a very different environment, right? So here, cities look different, kind of everything is different. I mean, yeah, of course, I would love to be able to go home more often, but I
Yeah.
haven't been there since 2022, right? So since
Right. Right.
early 2022.
Well, so how did you get into economics? What, because you would have like you were interested in literature, you were good in math, you were probably starting to realize you were good in mathematics, history. What
Yeah, it
made
was.
you go into economics?
Well, it was like it was path dependent. So it was. I knew that I knew something about this department because my mother was
Because your mother,
associated
right?
with it, and it felt like the right combination of exams. So I was thinking that going into pure math, I might not be able to do that, or it's a little bit boring because where I'm gonna like, what's about the social aspect? What about all these books that I read? And yeah, so that was a very, it was not a strategic in any sense, right? It was not like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do something future 10 years later. No, it just felt like the right thing to do. And yeah, and that's what happened.
Do you remember, did you take econometrics classes while you were there?
Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
What were those like?
those were, well, it was like in the Dutch tradition, right? So we were following this textbook that is written by Jan Magnus,
Mm.
and so it came after the courses in probability and then some mathematical statistics, and yeah, we were talking about basics of econometrics, like linear things, very traditional, I would say. So very 1960s, 1970s.
Mm.
Nothing really about causal developments, although it has been, well, it was 2008, right? So by the time there were a lot of things to discuss. But no, it was a very traditional course.
And you liked it? It really resonated with you?
Well, I like it. I liked it because when I was studying there at the econ department, I was saying kind of the courses were very heterogeneous, and the
Yeah,
more math intense courses, they were systematically better, okay, because
I
they were
see.
taught by more professional people.
I see.
And so any course that had that component, I liked. But I cannot
Mm.
say that it was my favorite subject, okay, at the time. So I was more interested in microeconomics and game theory
Oh,
than econometrics.
I see. I see. So when you graduate towards the end, are you thinking at this point, I want to become an economist? Because you immediately go into this master's program.
Yeah. So again, this is something that for to understand that you need to understand background, right? So in Russia, at the time, and still now, if you're a young man, right? So now it's much worse, of course. Now it's terrible, but back then it was if you're a young man, and you're not studying, then you are facing the possibility of going to the army, right, for a year or two. Well, at the time it was, I think it was changing from 2 years to 1 year. And so the prospects, it was kind of obvious that you need to go and study, right? It was, unless you want to go and serve, and I didn't want to go and participate in the Russian army, and you can bribe someone, okay? That was very common. You can have a medical condition. So that doesn't allow you to serve, or you can go and study. So for me, it was like I have to go and study, right? So it
Hmm.
was not a discussion.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that influences a lot of people. And then the question was where to study, and that decision was kind of I made that decision when I was during my second year of undergrad, I think. Uh,
Mm,
I learned about this master program at New Economic School. I learned that it is very good. It looked much more serious than what we were doing in the undergrad, both in
mm,
terms of the level of the things that I knew about, but also about because of the things that I had no idea about. So it looked like there is where I can start to really learn something about economics. Okay, so at the time I was getting interested in economics, right? I was like, I want to understand this actually better. And I thought, okay,
yeah.
spent this 4 years. Now I need to go and learn the real stuff. And the real stuff was at the New Economic School. This was, and again, at the time, really the only master program in Russia that was offering world-class education in economics. And so I wanted to do that. Did I
Yeah.
think at the time that I would go for PhD? No, no, I would not think that.
Hmm. What were the big classes that you were like, there's not only the stuff that you knew was better, but there were things you didn't know about that was there. What would that be?
Well, I was a micro person interested in micro economics. I was fascinated by, I don't know at the time, by auction theory, mechanism design,
Yeah.
contract theory. So those were the things that I was kind of expecting. I knew that they existed, but I
Right.
had no idea of what a modern kind of subject looks like. And then there were a bunch of conferences, and I went there to those conferences to see people from New Economic School presenting, and it looked very cool. I didn't understand much.
Mm.
So I decided kind of that was the aspiration to learn more about that.
Are you during new economic school? Are you starting to like econometrics more? And is it surprising you if so?
Well, I mean, again, not immediately actually. So
Yeah.
the first year, again, the training there is very hard, right? And
Mm,
it was very hard. Now it's a little bit different, but at the time it was very like you need to take all these classes, and so you start with econometrics. So there are modules. So every year has 5 modules, 7 weeks modules, and then after week 7, on week 8, there is an exam. So starting from the third module, you have econometrics courses. So it's econometrics 1, econometrics 2, econometrics 3. Then there is another econometrics, and so on. And so and they were very technical. They were at the top level of usually, or the top level of at the level of a graduate program. Okay, PhD level. So you
mm,
take those courses, and again, focusing on the more technical aspects of it. So I liked it, but it
yeah.
was not my favorite subject. Okay.
It was still micro.
Yeah, it was still micro, and it was micro until the very end of the master program. The only thing that changed was a little bit was this course that was taught, which was based on mostly harmless econometrics. Okay, so
Mm,
it was well 2012. So I had this course. At the time, it was still relatively new, right?
yeah.
And so that completely changed my perspective. That's
How
where
come? Why does that have an effect on you?
well, because it emphasized different aspects of kind of econometrics rather than viewing this as a technical subject where my goal was to say, okay, prove some property of an estimator, which I
Right.
could do, but I also
Yeah.
knew that I had much better equipped friends from, I don't know, math departments in Moscow or in Russia in general who could do that much better, right?
Right. Right.
Compared to this more, you know, I would not say necessarily economically oriented, but something that is more about the real world, right? So where you
Right.
think about experiments, where you think about causality. So at the time, I became interested in that. So it was in part, so that became an interest, which was not still not at the level of my micro economics interest, but it was something that I actually liked quite a lot. But that only was one course in the second year of my master program.
Oh, is it accurate? I'm just trying to piece this together. You're
Mhm.
interested in literature, you're interested in history, and you're very interested in microeconomics. And some of the things you listed for micro were like game theory, behavior, strategy. Do you think that something about the mostly harmless framework of causal inference appeals to that part of you that's interested in like people and behavior and things like that? Or is it something entirely different?
Well, it might be partly that, but I don't think that there was anything like maybe there was something like deep, and
Yeah,
sure if we discuss this for a long time, we might find a connection. But I think the most important thing it was just exciting, right?
it was
So it was,
exciting.
yeah, it was for the first time I really saw that relatively simple tools
Yeah.
right? Not the complicated things that we were learning in econometrics classes, right? So not
Hmm.
the optimal GMM and optimal instruments, right? So it
Hmm.
was something that simple tools that they work, they make sense, and sometimes they don't work, right? So that
Right.
that that was the fascinating aspect of it, and it was again
Hmm.
very empirically oriented, right? So we were seeing how all of these tools are applied to actual problems, right? Actual empirical problems,
Hmm.
compared to our education in other classes, which was mostly like, just technical, right? So we weren't
Yeah.
rarely talking about where we would actually use it. So,
Right.
so to me, it was mostly just exciting, right? So it
Yeah.
was something new and exciting. But of course,
Mm.
kind of there might have been some sort of connection because it was you need to think about people's behavior. There were like decisions that you need to think about, like whether people do it randomly, not
Yeah.
randomly. So that might have also appealed to me to some extent. It was
Are
definitely
you?
like it's actually for sure it's the fact that it is a more of a micro framework, right? For the micro level data rather than something about macro
Right.
that was important. Yeah.
So after you take that class, do you know who Hito Embens is at that point?
When I took that class, I heard his name.
Really?
Yeah, well, I heard his name during that class for sure. So I saw. Actually, I think for the first time I saw Hido's name was when we were studying empirical likelihood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that sounded very technical. Technical.
Did that leave an impression? I mean,
It
is
would
there
left some
something?
impression, yeah.
Is Hito when you graduate?
Mhm.
Are you thinking about I want to do more of this type of thing, and that's how you end up? I mean, obviously you end up at Stanford because it's one of the best programs in the world, but like, is it also conditional on going to the best program? Are you
Mhm.
also thinking, and this is where I can do more causal inference?
No, 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 it
Not
was
at
not.
all.
No, it's also after I graduate from the master program and go and work. Okay.
Oh, you do?
Unlike,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Unlike most of my friends, I got somewhat like so the way New Economic School works at the time, the master program, is that if you want to go to PhD, you need to decide basically at the end of the first year. Okay. And you need to spend summer arraying for people. You need to make sure that you're at the top in the internal ranking, and then you apply by the mid second year, right? So summer of the first year comes, and I decided I don't want to do it. I was like, no, I spent this year studying things. It's my year number 5 studying economics. There's going to be year number 6. I need to go and do something real. Okay.
Mm.
I was completely sure that I'm going to go and work. Okay. And so I actually started working when I was, I think, like in March of the second year, right? So I still haven't graduated at the time, but I started working, and I worked in Russian search engine, so that's called
Oh,
Yandex. I started working there. It's kind of like it was a research type of job, though, right? So we were doing something about the design of sponsored search auctions. It was all very new at the time again, so nothing has been done. And it looked exciting to me. I thought, oh, this is finally the place where I would be doing things that I learned. And also, it's not just this imaginary world of academia, it's something real. Okay, so I graduate, I go and work. Okay,
okay. What
and
year is this? What year is this? 2013,
2012,
2012?
oh, 2012.
Okay.
So I go and work, and when I work there, so two things happen. So first, I started working early, so before the graduation.
Mm.
So it so happened that I kind of there at New Economic School, you need to write master thesis. So I wrote a reasonably good master thesis. So this master
Okay.
thesis, at the end of the year, won the competition amongst the people kind of who were writing theses, right? So
Is it still micro? Is it like
it was
more?
micro. It was optimal design of optimal search sponsored search auctions, which was very motivated by what I was doing at Yandex, and so I got this prize, and it becomes clear that now with this thing, I actually can and go and apply for PhD, right? So my internal ranking, for example, at New Economics School, it was not bad, but it would not be sufficient to get into a place like Stanford GSB. Okay, definitely not. So now with this master thesis thing, it suddenly potentially became feasible. Okay, so
Oh, I see.
that was thing number.
Because New Economic School is such an excellent master's program, winning that a prize is not trivial. It was a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, it was a big deal, right? So
Oh,
it was something that could potentially boost my profile, right?
yeah, right,
So that
right.
was one thing. And the second thing was that the summer came, right, as of 2012, and I saw a lot of my friends, good friends, leaving, right? So they
Mm.
all went and they decided to because they all went to United States in different programs, Princeton, Harvard,
Oh,
Stanford.
they're going to econ programs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're going to econ programs, and so they all live in, right? So that's the summer
Uh,
into 12. And then that was the thing number two. And the thing number three was that I was working at Yandex at the time, but I was saying that look, this has been it was all very new what we were doing, and it was all in the very like you should imagine that there was like couple of people there, like literally just a couple of people who were doing this thing. So and the leadership of the company again at the time was not extremely excited about this. That changed like 3 years later, right? So 3 years
mm,
later, it would have been completely different world. So if I were at Yandex, like say 3 years later, I might have stayed there, right?
yeah.
Because there was a lot of energy in this.
Mm,
But at the time, there was not that much energy, and I was thinking,
mm,
"Oh, here there is not that much energy, but in a
mhm.
place, say like Google, there would be a lot of energy."
And
Okay.
your friends are gone too.
Yeah, and my friends are living too. And so, like, how can I get to a place like Google, or kind of how can I follow my friends? Well, I can go to and apply for PG programs.
Oh, you were kind of interested in maybe getting a job at staying in tech, sort of?
Well, I would kind of at the time, again, when you apply into these things, you cannot
Yeah,
say that, right? That's first
right.
thing. And so kind of not only you cannot say it, you should say the opposite. And when you start saying the opposite, you start believing it, right? So I
Mm,
was saying in all my statements that, look, I want to become a professor, and you start believing this. You say, yeah, surely, I'm excited about this. Actually, kind of this year working in a company actually made me more excited, and that's where
mm,
the because I saw that some of these tools that I learned, they can be applied. You can
right.
also kind of, I saw for the first time I worked with data, with actual data, and I saw the potential of the econometrics, and that's when I started thinking about experiments, and that's where kind of
Mm,
actually the interest to doing econometrics, where it's coming from, right? It was
yeah.
there at the time, and so all of these things together, I was okay, like seems like PhD program is the right thing. And also I had a big push from some of my teachers who were saying, look, this is a unique opportunity, right? Sure, you can stay here, but you can always return here if you want. This is once in a lifetime chance. You should do it. Okay,
Right.
so yeah, so that what happened.
So where all did you apply?
Oh well, I applied to Wow. So I applied to, I think, like 6 places, 7 places. It was
Yeah.
Stanford JSB. It was MIT. It was Harvard, Princeton, Northwestern, UPenn, or maybe 8 places, and and UCLA. UCLA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so what drew you to Stanford? What is it? If it's not the econometric, if it's not like content matter, what was it about? What were all the things about Stanford that you were kind of intrigued by?
Well, first of all, I was first admitted to Princeton at Northwestern, right? And at Stanford JSB, I was only waitlisted. Okay?
Mm,
And I went to admit days to Northwestern. I liked it very much. I went to the admit day at Princeton. I enjoyed it, although less than Northwestern. And then I go to Stanford, and it felt like a different game, partly because. As I said, whenever you visit Stanford campus for the first time with the right weather, and especially for a person
yeah.
like for a person from Moscow, where you go there in April, and in April still in Moscow everything is gray, there is lots of snow melting, so it's not super pretty. And then you go to a place like Stanford, they drive you through, I don't know, Palm Drive, you see all these palm trees. That kind of just changes your perspective on things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I can be here for the next 5 years, and then of course academically, even though I liked these ideas of experiments and econometrics, but I also saw that like still it was micro
Yeah.
things,
It was
a
just
big
powerhouse for
part of it. And
micro.
Stanford
Right.
JSB is the best place in the
Right.
world to do that.
Right.
And so once I moved from the wait list to being actually admitted, the decision was kind of straightforward.
Ah, so you go there and you're still because you had just written this master's thesis
Yeah.
and it was very micro oriented, it sounded like. So you've got Milgram and Roberts and Roth and Matt Jackson, and it's like just packed. Do you, when you are taking those classes, are you noticing that you're getting pulled towards econometrics?
Well, there were two things. So first, when I got there, I decided that there are things that I know and there are things that I don't know, right? So
Mm,
the things that I don't know are the more of the statistics type, right?
got it.
So okay, so and Stanford, not just Stanford JSB, but Stanford as a university is a great place to learn these things. So I start from the very beginning into taking these courses that are core for statistics. Okay, so the first year I was taking the probability theory class. Okay, so this
Yeah.
is a math probability theory that you take throughout the whole year. It's very intense. It was probably the most intense math class in my life. Um, it was very hard. Okay,
Mm,
so I had this kind of plan to learn new things. So just
yeah.
to go to and study things that I don't know. Okay. At the same time, I was taking the theory classes. Okay.
Mm.
And some of them during my first year, I was taking classes that were the advanced classes, the second year classes. So do that. I end up being less excited about theory than I thought I would. Right?
How come? What do you think? What is it about it that's disappointing you?
Well, I think it was just I don't know. I think again it was just a random thing. I think it would if I were to push a little bit more, I could have gotten to the more excited stuff, right?
Uh,
Like it might have been that this particular courses that I took were actually very similar to the courses that I took before, and so it didn't sound very exciting or very novel.
mm,
I didn't learn that much new in theory during my first year compared
mm,
to how much I learned from taking this other stuff,
mm.
right, at the stats department. And so then the first year comes. Back then, well, actually, wait, still, I don't know. They had exams, and so there is an exam. There is one exam in theory and one exam in econometrics. So those are field exams that I need to pass to kind of to move forward in the program. So I go and I aced the theory exam. I did perfectly well. I solved everything.
Yeah,
And then I didn't do very well in my econometrics exam. It was like okay. I mean, like it was not. I did okay, but not great, which was funny because after that, because during the summer I decided no, I actually want to do more of this econometrics things. And one aspect which I guess I forgot about is that at that time I met Hido, right? So
mm.
I took his class, which was second year class. Uh,
What is it?
it's this class that he before taught at Harvard and also taught at Berkeley. So this is like a class which combines methods for applied research, right? So it
It's a
was part,
causal inference class. It's a
it
causal
was
inference.
causal inference, but not just causal inference. It was also
Ah,
it was also discrete choice. It was also some Bayesian stuff, but it was
mm,
all oriented on being kind of on something that people actually use, right?
got it.
So I take that immediately once I get to Stanford, right? So this is my first, so it's kind of in the fall, and
Oh, he teaches a first year class at
no, it
Stanford.
was a second year class,
It was
but
a
I
second year,
took,
but you took it your first
yeah,
year.
yeah. I took it because I was saying, look, I took already a lot of economics, and that's kind of the beauty of Stanford GSB program. You can basically do whatever you want.
You can jump ahead or do whatever. Okay, got it. Got it.
And so I take his class, and that's just where it started. I started talking to Hido like weekly. From the
What
from
is it about what is it about you and him that's having this chemistry? Why do you think what is it? What's going on?
I think I was just very lucky. And when he arrived to Stanford, he was in terms he was the kind of there were not that many people who would work with him there, right?
But why? I mean, there's lots of people that are new. What is it about keto that really is like, oh, I'm really getting excited by this guy or working with him. What's it
Well, I
like
think
back
yeah.
then?
At the time, like first it was the class, right? And so and again, this was an exciting class because I was learning new things. Okay, because
Yeah.
Hiro has a unique perspective on many things, and it was just maybe some of the tools I saw before, but I never saw here like the way he thought about them.
Mm,
It was always very intriguing. The second thing is that he's an extremely open person, right? So you can
yeah.
go and talk to him, and he is genuinely engaged. And the third thing, which I think is kind of where I got lucky, and yeah, it's just at the time he didn't have that many students, right? So
Right.
during my time at Stanford GSB, he basically had like two students, me and Nick Dudchenko, right, another Russian. And so all of this explosion that now you go to Stanford GSB, there are like tens of students who work with Hido. There is a big
Mm,
lab. There are like a lot of stuff is happening. All of that you go to 2013, nothing
mm,
happening. So he's teaching this class in a program where most people are interested in theory, right? So of course it's very popular class. People take it. People from other departments are taking it, but I think he just had time to talk to me, and I abused that. So I think
Well,
that.
so is synthetic control on your radar while you're at Stanford? Are you thinking about anything related to that at all?
Not really. I mean, I heard about synthetic control. Okay, I actually had have a friend like who was working on that at the time, and Nick Duchenko was also doing
Yeah.
stuff on that.
He's
Uh,
a classmate. He was your classmate.
he was my classmate in the master program, but then because
Oh,
he
he was
went.
your classmate back in at
Yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah,
economic.
yeah, 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 yeah. But then
Oh,
because he graduated and went straight to the PhD program, whereas I waited. So when we
yeah.
were at B, he was the year um I was the year behind him, right?
He's already got this paper with Invens. When
No,
would
I
that?
mean like that was at the towards the end of
That's like
the
2016, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was again, yeah, like mid PhD, right?
So Invens is interested in synthetic control, but
Yeah,
you're like, what are you
no.
writing your essays on? What you've got these essays in econometrics dissertation. What are you writing
Yeah, yeah,
about?
yeah, yeah. Well, kind of there are so one of them is what eventually get published in Restat, right? So this paper on fixed effects and Moonlag estimator, right? So that's
Mm.
what we've been working on with Hido. Another part
Oh,
was I got excited about optimal transportation methods and difference in different and like thinking about difference and differences from kind of a different perspective.
oh,
Okay, so
you were thinking about diff and diff, just
I was
not.
thinking about
Ah,
different
got
things,
it.
but yeah, yeah. But I was the kind of at the time I was more of a identification person, right? I was thinking more
Mm,
about how can you identify things, okay? And I think that was partly driven by my like theoretical, micro theoretical background, right? So it's like
I see.
how can you the interesting aspect of is how can you learn things from the data, not in the kind of identification
Right.
sense, not statistical sense,
Yeah.
which and that changed after I graduated. So again, I do not think that like as everybody who's doing PhD, there are moments of crisis, right? When you think this is all for nothing, and this was my case as well, right? And as I was saying, like when I was getting there to Stanford, I was thinking in the background that I might want to go and work for someone like Google, right? So if you
Mhm.
were to talk to me during my year number 3 or year number 4, I would have told you that for sure I'm going to go and work in industry.
There's probably a lot of conversations around the students, right? Like I wouldn't mind going to Google or Facebook or at that time.
Well, there is kind of at that time it was still not extremely popular, right? In a
Mm,
sense that this wave when Amazon started to hire hundreds of PhD economists, it hasn't happened yet, right?
I
It
see.
started
Got
to
it.
happen towards the very end, so maybe 1 year before I graduated, right? Maybe
I
in my
see.
year. But
I
so we're
see.
talking about situations where some people go there and you see them and you think, okay, this is an opportunity. I also did an internship at Google, so I kind of knew that I might get a job there if I really want.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of not very worried about my job market prospects because I was thinking, yeah, I'm gonna figure it out. Okay, I'm gonna go and work in industry, and it's all gonna be fine. So when
Mm,
we're talking about research, part of my PhD years were just, I don't know, I don't say wasted because I had a great time in Stanford, but the research wise, we're not super productive, right? So I could have
mm.
done more. Um, but then I decided to actually try the academia, and I want to write the dissertation to graduate properly, and I was doing that, and then it all started, right? So I started to enjoy doing research after I got a job as a professor.
Oh,
Yeah.
are you now? So are you interacting with your co-authors like Susan and David Hirschberg and Wager while you're at Stanford? I mean, like is that you've had conversations with them at that point, or is it later?
Well, with Stefan, I started to have conversations during my last year. Okay,
Okay,
and he was a part like he had a big influence. Okay, he's an amazing guy,
really?
and because he has statistics background, unlike me, although I took lots of these classes. Actually, he was teaching one of those, like he was a TA for one of the classes that I took when I was studying. And so he has a very fresh and different perspective on things, on how to think about statistical problems that despite the fact that I took those courses, I still don't have, right? Or I didn't have back then. So just talking to him, it was great. The last year, he changed my view on many things. Okay. So with Susan was part of my committee. And so we talked sometimes.
I was just kind of thinking with your background interest in micro and econometrics, the distance to Susan doesn't seem terribly far.
Again, if I were more strategic during my PhD, I mean, for sure, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, I would have tried to definitely work more with Susan as well. I mean,
Yeah.
but at the time, it was just, yeah, again, everybody kind of goes through this PhD journey in a
Right.
particular way. So, yeah, so then with David, I met in 2019, I think. Yeah, so
Oh. So
he was a
where is this
postdoc.
synthetic control diff and diff paper born? Like where is it literally like the
Oh,
conception of it?
oh yeah, this is a unique thing, right? So, so we were working with Stefan on something related.
You and Hito?
No, me and Stefan Wager. We were
Oh,
talking
you,
about.
the two of you were
Yeah,
working
yeah, yeah,
together.
yeah. We were working on something that was kind of in this same spirit. So kind of it was like, okay, how can we use weighting types of estimators in the panel data models? So that was where we started. So I was talking to him during the summer, and then I go to Stanford. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, and I just go there and I talk to him about this problem, and he says, "Oh no, you know what? Kind of Hida and Susan were also talking about a similar thing. Maybe we should all get together and discuss it."
What's this thing? What are you thinking about?
So we were talking about balancing weights. They were thinking about like this relationship between synthetic control and diff and diff, that there are certain aspects kind of that are missing. That like if you view this, so Hida was excited about this idea that you can view synthetic control as kind of running a regression with weights, but without fixed effects. So he was like, okay, but maybe we should add fixed effects. And so we all gathered together. Okay, so this is December.
What,
Uh,
like you're like physically,
yeah.
like
So
y'all
I'm
are
there.
physically in a room.
I'm physically there. We're all there, and another person there is David Hirschberg, who is a postdoc at the time, and so we all gather there, and it's like, yeah, this sounds like an exciting thing, right? This sounds like an exciting project, and I also tell them, look, I just saw a paper being presented by. So I don't think it was Avi. I think it was Eli, who
The
was
augmented synthetic control paper?
yeah. So some like the very first version of that.
Yeah.
And we're
Right.
like, oh, but we still like we can do things differently, or we can have better statistical guarantees. So let's try and work very
Mm.
hard. And so this was it is really amazing. It was like 4 weeks. We wrote
4 weeks?
we wrote the paper in 4 weeks.
Get
Uh,
out of here.
yeah. So it was we just and we had meetings like twice a week. Okay, so maybe yeah, I remember in 3 weeks. Yeah, so it was because it was so until Christmas we were working nonstop every day.
Huh.
Yeah, we were meeting at Stanford. We were talking. It was very exciting. Okay, and so then
Oh,
so then we get this draft out. Very rough, I would
this
say.
is what, 2020 or what?
Yeah, this is no, this is the draft. Yeah, so let me think about it. Okay, I need to understand. So we were doing the revision during COVID, so that was 2020.
2020, right.
But this is not the no. So this has been that had to be 20. Is that right?
18?
Yeah, but then because exactly, yeah, sure. We Yes, yes. So yeah, so it was December of 2018, right? So we write the paper, all of us working together, and we submit it,
Mm.
okay, pretty quickly. So we submitted to the American Economic Review in January, I think. Okay, so we
Mm.
wrote it. The draft was rough, okay. The current paper is so much better than that draft. So then we wait, and
And
then
you're still a grad student?
no. This is what this
You're at
20.
CEMFI at this point?
Yeah, so I just started at CEMFI, but I came to Stanford in December the plan was to work with Stefan,
Oh, I
but then
see.
we ended up working, all of us working on this together.
Wow. Were you surprised you weren't going there for this and it just turns into this like spontaneous flash mob kind of paper writing session?
Yeah, it was very intense, but
Wow.
I like that. It
Yeah.
was very intense, and it was I never had any experience like this.
You like the energy. You've said exciting and energy.
Yeah.
You like the adrenaline of the writing.
Yeah, I
Of
like that. Like, I like when people get together and work. Okay, so that
Mm,
I like very much. Okay, so and when it's interactive and it's also you can see the progress. I think everybody likes it, but
yeah.
I enjoy it very much. I think that's the best aspect of this job. So yeah.
Dimitri, so for the sake of the listener, that's not terribly familiar. I want you to imagine that the listener is not an econometrician though. And so what is it that like if you were eavesdropping on these like two applied micro people that are studying something with panel data, what is it that you would say to them go, "Oh, this synthetic diff and diff thing is perfect." What would they have had to been talking about for you to go, "You've got to read my paper. It's perfect for what you're working on."
Okay. So yeah, like you need to understand that I'm a skeptical person, right? So
Okay.
it's like many econometricians are. So I don't think anything is perfect.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I would say that if you have a problem that involves analyzing the effect of some sort of intervention, right? So would that be a policy intervention, or that it potentially can be some environmental change, right? So if you
Mhm.
want to do that and you're in the observational setting, so the traditionally your skill set, your tool set is pretty limited, right? So most of the people would have used difference in difference for that, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the limitations, right? So what is the difference in difference is doing? It says, well, let me just compare the people who like units that experienced the event to those who didn't. I think this comparison is not particularly great because these are very different units. So let me
Hmm.
try to do the same thing before they were exposed to this event. If I see this difference before, then maybe I should subtract that difference, right? So
Yep.
that's different. And that's very, very common. But then kind of the argument will be like, yeah, but why would that particular strategy work? Why would you want to kind of just compute this average? Why would you want to compare to an average unit? Maybe you should compare to someone who looks more like you,
Yeah.
and that's where the idea of synthetic controls comes in, right? So
Right.
we're like, let's try and find some sort of, maybe there is no perfect unit that looks exactly like you, but there is some sort of combination of units that looks more similar to you. That goes
Yeah.
back to Alberto Abadia's work and say on Basque Country. There is no other community in Spain that looks exactly like Basque Country, but you take a convex combination of them and they start looking like Basque Country.
Right.
You do that and this makes sense, but then you say, oh, but maybe I want to apply these ideas together, right? So maybe I want to kind of,
But that's what I'm saying. This person is like, they go, "Well, I'll just do synthetic control."
yeah.
So then why are you saying to them, "Well, I want you to reconsider doing that"? What is the
Well,
problem that you notice in these people that makes you say, "Wait, wait, wait, do this other thing"?
Well, there are like two issues. So first of all, there is nothing particularly bad with doing synthetic control, right? It's just typically synthetic control is not applied to the same problems where diff and diff is applied to, right? So
Yeah.
many people just viewed them separately. And so
Right.
to me, the big contribution of the synthetic diff and diff paper, it's not just the method, it's also this idea that you can merge these things together and use them in very similar settings, right?
Right.
And so that is not straightforward. And if you still look at the applied literature, these things are separated. So the
Yeah.
first thing would be just saying to people who want to do different diff, look, you can actually do something different, right? And then the second aspect, should they do synthetic control or should they do synthetic diff and diff? The argument would be, well, synthetic diff and diff is a more flexible thing. It allows you to, in principle, not be able to completely match people on their, say, pretrends, right? So you're allowing for some slack there and still
Yeah.
get statistical guarantees.
Mm.
That's one thing. Another thing, of course, you can say to an applied person, look, your pretrends are going to look amazing, right? So you do this and they're going to look perfect as they can. And
Right.
this might sound like, oh, this is like data mining. And so some people are very skeptical about that.
Yeah.
But the beauty of this is that we know that people in practice try to make the pretrends look great, right? It's not
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they are not engaged with that. What we can guarantee as statisticians that if you do it in our way, then the statistical behavior is going to be well understood. Okay?
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's what's important, that it's a systematic way to tweak the data. It's not
Yeah.
something
Yeah. Yeah.
that you hide from me, but rather what you do explicitly.
I
And
feel like in the applied community for a long, long time, they have been wanting synthetic diff and diff because you would oftentimes kind of want to do something like, we'll use a propensity score, find units that are similar, and then do but there was no like known properties to it. It was just kind of like you would just see one person do it one way, one person it seems like you guys were filling a real need, not like even a hole, but like the demand was really high.
well, I mean, again, ex post you can think like that, right? Ex ante, it was driven by many different ideas. One idea
Mm,
was purely algorithmic. It was like, why shouldn't we just do it? It makes sense, right? So why
right,
shouldn't we run a weighted version of diff and diff?
right.
That makes sense. And why shouldn't those weights to be like synthetic control weights? Again, makes sense. Uh,
Hmm.
and why should there be just student weights? Let's also have time-specific weights. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
also makes sense. So it all made sense algorithmically, but then also kind of statistically, it turned out to be a non-trivial problem, right? It turned
Mm,
out to be like analyzing the properties of that type of procedure in different kinds of statistical models is a non-trivial task, and a lot of heavy lifting was done by David Hirschberg, who was he wrote an amazing paper with kind of separate technical paper trying to understand this more systematically, the properties of things
mm.
like that. Okay, and so kind of there were multiple aspects that made it exciting for us. Did we
Yeah,
think that this is going to be like a next big thing? Well, maybe people who were more experienced had this idea. Maybe Hido thought it would be a next big thing. Maybe Susan did, but I don't think that they were motivated just by that.
yeah,
Again,
yeah, yeah,
it was more like it sounds reasonable. It's just
yeah,
make
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and then
Why do
export.
you think it took off? You know, it's published in 2011. It's going to pass a
One.
thousand sites probably like 2021. It's going to pass a thousand sites like very, very soon. And I was just counting up Abady's first 2003, and it took him 11 years to hit a thousand sites. So it's
Sure,
like
but it's much easier when someone did it. Right? So and I think we were
totally. I'm not trying to diminish Abity, but it's like because you're standing on the shoulders of a great paper. But why do you think this paper is just like run away and been so popular? What is it about it that has been so appealing to people, you think?
Honestly, that's a great question. I don't know. I think there are multiple aspects of it. So one aspect I hope is that we extended the scope of applications. Okay, so I think this is we just told people that actually you can do this more in environments like kind of that where you
Right.
previously didn't think about doing this. So I think
Right.
that's an aspect of it. Another
Hmm.
aspect of it, of course, is that synthetic control is a very what like, still is, but like last 5 years, it was like, there was an explosion in theoretical work on synthetic control. So
Yeah.
if you go through many of these citations, many of them would be just methodological work that kind of is based on what we're doing. But of course, I think the majority of citations is still empirical, and
Right.
that's what I actually like about it. I think this is people like new tools, right? So people
Yeah.
like when econometricians give them something rather than take something from them. So I think and this is a new tool. It's a tool for the very popular environment,
Yeah.
and I think in a lot of policy work, right, people want to have something that has better guarantees. They don't have perfect data. They
Yeah.
cannot do something that is very, very complicated. And so
Mhm.
synthetic diff sounds like a good compromise. Do I
Yeah.
think that potentially sometimes people abuse what we wrote, right, and use it in situations where you shouldn't use it? For sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I think this is the danger of any kind of this is a nightmare of any econometrician, right? That kind
Yeah.
of
Right. Right.
use your
Right.
tools and appropriately. But I still think that for many applications, it's a much better tool than what was available before, right?
Mm.
So,
One of my favorite, I'm gonna end with this because we've gone over a little bit, but one of my favorite movies is called Bottle Rocket. I don't know if you've ever seen it by Wes Anderson. He did Royal
no, I didn't say that.
Tenenbaums and Rushmore. This was his first movie,
Ah,
and the main character is played by Owen Wilson,
mhm.
and he's got you see him very early on showing his like best friend this long sheet of paper, and it says his 6 month plan, his 1 year plan, 2 year plan, 5 year plan, 10 year plan, 20 year plan, and like a 50 year plan. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to ask you to give me your 1 to 50 year plan, but
Okay.
I am curious, what are you most excited about in the immediate future and looking ahead in terms of, being an economist and the kinds of stuff that make you excited? What are you most excited about?
Well, that's a great question. What am I most excited about? If you ask me like big picture, I would say that I'm mostly excited about the interaction between structural economic work and reduced form methods. This is something that I see happening a lot. So
Mm,
I'm visiting Harvard, and I just went through the all the job market seminars and the amazing candidates, and you see that I think the most impressive ones are exactly those that combine credible like evidence using these tools that we develop or other people developed, and kind of, but then interact with them more through the lens of actual economics. I think this is where things get excited for me, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
when you say, okay, this was the first step, I learned something using, I don't know, say some simple event studies, but then I need to go deeper because there is an economic questions, and that forces me to think deeper and maybe do additional data work. So these are the things that I personally think would take off, right? I hope they will. And
Mhm.
I think there are many, many exciting papers to be written there.
Mm.
That's kind of the big picture. So
Do
I'm
you feel
trying.
pulled in that direction? That's sort of the kind of stuff you're finding yourself like you might want to get out of bed to do stuff like that.
I'm thinking about things like that. Yes, there are projects
Mm.
like that. There are
Yeah, and that
also,
brings together your old interest in micro too.
it does. Yeah, it does. Okay, so
Mm.
like, yeah, my dream would be to kind of combine those things eventually,
Be
right?
able to
So
take them back. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I hope that I will be able to do something along those lines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
that's the big picture.
that's awesome. That's great. Well, it's been really nice talking to you.
Thank
I really,
you. Thank
yeah.
you.
I
Yeah,
really
I hope.
appreciate it. When I see you in person, we can you can tell me about your latest bike ride around Europe again.
Sure, sure. Actually, it happened in August. Yeah.
August. Okay, cool. All right, man. Well, have a great day.
You too. Bye.
She hated when I called.